It's on now. So we're
I'm
on.
ready and turned on.
Oh, I'm glad you're turned on. That's what I like out of you, Bill. So, hello, everybody. Thank you. We are here for the first ever FSM Round Table. I am Harrison. I'm from the Aggressive Pacifist Podcast and the Liberty Happy Hour. I'm joined by Bill Barger from Don't Quote Me on This and Johnny Lemuria from the Johnny Lemuria Show. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
Doing great, man.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys could be here. I've never actually had a chance to speak with Johnny before. I know Bill quite well. I've been over to his brother's house. We've recorded together and had some other podcasts and conversations. But it's nice to finally meet you, Johnny. So,
Thank you.
So, what do you guys talk about on your shows? What is your podcast about, Johnny?
Ooh, I seem to be allergic from having a specific topic for anything that I do. I would say my show is a talk show, sort of aspiring to be a talk variety show that covers left libertarianism, the Libertarian Party, and interesting subcultures. I think that would be a fair way of describing it.
Yeah, you don't really talk about any one thing, which, my show's kind of along the same way. We talk about a little bit of everything, but it always comes back to libertarianism in some way. Mm-hmm. And you have guests on where you really don't talk about libertarianism at all sometimes. You just get to whatever their core thing is.
Well, cool. I think that, if you want to be smug enough about it, everything relates to libertarianism in some way or another, so you can tie it in there. But I try to have people on who are either directly involved in libertarianism or involved in what may be called libertarian issues, or who are involved in something that maybe needs libertarianism, like the arts or something like that. I tend not to have duck farmers on. I understand there's a large market for the Duck Farmer podcast, but that's not really the beat I go for.
Oh, that's cool.
So either people who do liberty or who need liberty to have happen.
That's cool. So you're kind of bridging that gap. What about you, Bill? You're Don't Quote Me on This podcast. You have a pretty interesting name with that. What's that all about?
So the Don't Quote Me on This podcast, essentially, I, before the pandemic, was a stand-up comic who wasn't really too into the whole cancel culture thing. I think people should be allowed to make fucked up jokes, and unfortunately, they're not all going to be funny. I just wanted to have a show called Don't Quote Me on This, where you could have whatever conversation. I'm a libertarian. I'm like an anarchist. But I wanted to have a show where people come on, talk about whatever, make offensive jokes, and it's called Don't Quote Me on This. It just kind of leave a place, or have a place where you can have whatever conversation. We're not trying to upset people, but we don't want to. I want to be a space where you can come on here and So
people who are going to be offended
don't quote
hopefully
me.
aren't going to listen.
Offensive
You know what I'm
jokes
saying?
and-
Like,
and
it seems like we need a place for that. So it's kind of like my personal vendetta against cancel culture.
Yeah, I think we've all seen just kind of the side effects and the repercussions from cancel culture. Some of our favorite things are now racist, or they deserve to be canceled for being sexist. And it's like, wait, I grew up watching that, and now you're telling me it's racist? Why wasn't it racist when I was a kid? Why is it racist now? So I think there's a lot of things in this kind of society we have now that's just shifting so much that it's important to remember you still have the right to say horrific things.
I'm going to get my fingers slammed in the Overton window.
Awesome. Awesome.
That's my goal with the show. Keeping my foot in there so when they try to close it on this part, like, nope, we're still saying the word cunt. I'm sorry.
Now, Johnny, I know that you're a reverend.
Yes.
How did you get into that? Like, how does that bridge with libertarianism? Because I know quite a few people who are pretty into religion. They hold positions in the church, and they're also good voices for liberty. So how do those two kind of tie in?
Well, let's make sure that we're on our terms here. When I say I'm a reverend, I have been ordained in 3 different religions: the Church of the Subgenius, the Moorish Orthodox Church, and the Cult of Discordia. So my answer for that question may not be the standard answer for Christian reference, is what I'm going for there. I mean, I specialize in what might be called postmodern religions. So I'm not sure I could give an answer to that question the way that you wanted it.
Well, I think you actually just brought up a way more interesting conversation than where that was originally going to go anyway. You said 3 things in there, and only one of them I've heard of. The cult of the Moorish, is that what you said?
No, the Moorish Orthodox Church.
Okay.
And the Cult of Discordia. I mean,
That sounds
it's
so
Discordianism. I just call it Cult of Discordia because that sounds better to me.
And what is the cult of Discordia? I've never heard of that.
Ah, okay. Well, that's actually kind of tied in with libertarianism. The Cult of Discordia worships the Greek goddess Eris, also known as the Roman goddess Discordia, the goddess of chaos, confusion, disorder. She was one of the instigators of the Trojan War in mythology. And back in the early 60s, there were these 2 guys who were discussing all the troubles in the world drunk in a bowling alley, as one does. And they decided that the main problem with the world was disorder. At which point they were visited by a talking ape, I believe, who had a holy revelation that no, the problem in the world was too much order. And thus the Church of Discordia was formed. I say it ties into libertarianism because one of the main people behind Discordianism is Robert Anton Wilson, who was a philosopher, author, and editor for Playboy magazine for a while, who was also a libertarian and someone that a lot more libertarians should know about. That Robert Anton Wilson is not considered one of the main intellectual lights in libertarianism is, well, in my personal opinion, one of the things that's wrong with libertarianism today. There's always evidently something wrong with libertarianism today, but that would be my pet thing. We need more Robert Anton Wilson in libertarianism.
I'm going to write that guy's name down.
Yeah, I took that down as well. Robert Anton Wilson. That sounds interesting. I think I've heard his name, but I've never knew he was a libertarian or someone we should look into.
Definitely. When the recall election happened in California that got Schwarzenegger elected way back then.
Mm-hmm.
You remember when Schwarzenegger got elected governor of California?
Yeah, the governor.
Like 2008 or something.
Something like that. Everybody and their mother ran for governor at that point. You had politicians, you had porn stars. Robert Anton Wilson also ran for governor on the Guns and Dope Party, invented purely for that. And one of his, he's sort of in the Merry Prankster, Vermin Supreme vein of politics. One of his platform positions was replacing 1/3 of the elected officials in the California government with emus at random to sort of class up the joint. Exactly.
I love it, dude. I love it.
So I think we need more Robert Anton Wilson in our lives and in libertarianism. And that's one of the reasons why I'm a Discordian.
So then
Cool.
Discordianism, if that's the right way to say that, is
Yeah.
about understanding you can't bring order to the world. So let's bring a little less order and let the natural order take its place.
It's recognition that natural order comes from chaos, not from the imposition of order. So all these attempts to impose order just generate more disorder.
Right.
The opposite of order is disorder, not chaos. Chaos is what allows organic, natural order to come about.
So if you were to replace 1/3 of the California legislators with emus, the other 2/3 would have to work a hell of a lot harder to make something actually happen there. And so you create order because otherwise they have a bunch of emus running around. At the very least, they have to create order by removing the emus, right?
Yeah, or they just have to move much quicker in order to be not pecked to death by emus. So either way, it works out.
Right. I like that. I like that a lot.
Win-win scenario.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a pretty good argument for minarchy or anarchy, depending on which flavor you want to go with there. And we can see that actually evidenced in the yin yang. This is something that's very ancient knowledge, is when you have a little bit of order inside a lot of chaos, it's fine. It doesn't grow. When you have a lot of chaos inside a little bit of order, it doesn't grow. But then it can expand out, and that's what the yin yang represents. Is you've got a little bit of each, and they keep everything in balance. And once you have too much, it overthrows the whole thing. So,
if there's something else that more libertarians need to know about and embrace, it is Taoism. I would say that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm a spiritual Hindu, if I'm anything, so I can agree with that.
Can we talk about that a little bit? Because I was on David Feit's show yesterday. We recorded an episode, and he was saying the same thing. And I have not heard of this before the last week or two since I met all you guys from the network. The tie between Taoism and libertarianism seems strong.
Well, yes. The entire thing about one of the entire things about Taoism, because the first thing you need to know about Taoism, the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. So saying it's this is very tricky, because if you can say it's this, it probably isn't that. But one of the things about Taoism is when Taoism talks about authority, like when the Taoist in a book talks to the emperor and stuff like that, or when he talks to anybody really, it's one of the main messages is doing without doing. Don't strive so much. Don't go, I will do this. It's more of a cultivate the right sense and just let it happen. So their main message to emperors and to people of authority is stop ruling. Stop being so active in your rule. Allow the people to do what they do, and things usually work out. I mean, it is a sort of pre-economic invisible hand metaphor from Adam Smith. Adam Smith just counted a lot more paper clips than Lao Tzu did. So that's why it's more of an economic event. But it's the same basic concept. Allow people to do what they do, and good things usually happen.
And then they can they can appeal to the authority for the rule when they need it, rather than you ruling from on high or by decree or something. In that instance, when you're talking about like
they don't go that
society or something.
They don't go that far in the books. The books are usually more of the thing about that sort of thing is you got an empire or authority charging down on you. At that point, recommending a middle way, a compromise, that's just a way of ceding ground. You meet that with you meet action with non-action. Then maybe something in the middle evens out. But it's basic negotiation. If you don't start your position at the middle, you start your position at the extreme. They start their position at the extreme, and it
right, of course. But I guess what maybe the point I was trying to illustrate that I didn't articulate quite so well was, if you're an overbearing emperor and your advisors are like, hey, you need to not rule so much. I mean, there's a legitimate case to be made that the more you're trying to impose order on these people, the more upset they're going to be, the more likely they're going to try to overthrow you or something.
Yep, true.
And if you can have this power up at the top, kind of let people live their lives, if they do have the problem that they need solved, by not ruling their everyday lives, they might actually respect you and think, well, this guy has some power I don't have, and then appeal to you rather than because you
Yes.
can impose so much order that people hate you if it's not the order that they want, even if it is the order that you want, the structure that you want. And it's almost like leaving a little more chaos in there. They can come to you, and obviously I don't support emperors or anything like that. It just seems like a practical, advice. And yes, it does leave that room for the middle where is the peasant going to say, this is what I'm okay with this guy solving my life? And where is it where you're going to say, listen, you guys can't have that many cows. I'm taking 3 of them, but that's interesting. I never thought about that.
Well, another thing to think of too is many of the spiritual beliefs that people have, that maybe not exactly Taoism, but that spiritual Hinduism, Buddhism, these different ideologies, a lot of us think that, we're incarnates, like we're here for a short time learning lessons. And it's very hard to violate somebody and treat them horrible and enslave them when you think you're only here for a short time to learn a lesson and then you go on. Like you treat people differently when you have a more spiritual understanding, and you don't think that this is all there is. You understand this is like elementary school. You're here to learn the base levels that you need, learn the base, tasks. How are you going to function? Like, what lessons do you need? What is humility, and how do you strip away the ego and those types of things? So that way, in your next life, you're able to live a better, more productive life. And then if you don't do those things, you reincarnate and come back here. A lot of people think this is either the bottom level of hell, or the top level of hell, bottom level of heaven. So we're either right at the top about to break out into something good, or we're right at the bottom about to fall into something bad. So if you have this spiritual belief too, it's very hard to, be a Buddhist or be a Taoist and then go out and violate the nap. Your spirituality, your relationship to your as I am creator doesn't allow it.
It even makes me think, just in the 30 seconds or 2 minutes I've been thinking about this, it even makes me think of terrible people that I would otherwise despise in a little bit more compassionate light. If they're just here learning a lesson, like, hopefully they fucking learn it and come back as something better. If I'm going to entertain that idea, because rather than being like, oh, this person, I don't like murderers or rapists or anybody like that, but the idea that we should just turn the same level of hate or evil on them kind of dissolves if you believe in the Taoism of, like, I don't know, maybe we should keep those people away from society or something, but like, that's interesting. It almost, if they're here to learn a lesson too, it's like, it kind of limits the repercussions you'd be willing to enact on that person, because it's like, you can't enact it against their soul, their immortal soul, it's like, I don't know, maybe punishments help people learn their lessons. That's I got to think about this.
It's something people have been wrestling with since forever. So yeah, it does.
Yeah, I don't think there's any one right answer. I think it's something that we're going to be thinking about until the day we die, and then the day after we die, we'll have an answer, and it could be absolutely nothing. It could just be black and that's it. You're dead. Or you could go back to the substrate and take on your energy form in the Palladian subsystem, and who knows? Like, there's 1,000 things it could be. There's 1,000 different guesses as to what it is, and we have no idea.
I just want to compliment you on the New Age speak you just put in there. That was vintage stuff. Substrate and Pallades. I enjoyed that.
Sometimes you got to go old school, Johnny.
Is that from the 60s or something?
That fits somewhat in the 60s.
Sounds like
itself, but.
So how did you get into kind of that strain of spirituality? How did you even find the Cult of Discordia? Because, like I said, something I've never even heard of.
Okay. Well, that all started, I suppose, with the Church of the Subgenius. I don't know if you heard of them.
No, not until you said it a little bit ago.
Okay, the Church of the Subgenius is a sort of art movement started back in 1980, and it's an art movement as religion, or perhaps religion as art movement. It's a satirical take on evangelical Christianity, UFO cults, and conspiracy theories in general, which were very popular around 1980. And the reason I came across that is quite simply, I was going on a family trip with my family, and we stayed at a bed and breakfast that didn't have any television. And so I was sent to the bookstore to get a book to read. So I had something to do that night while we were staying there. And at the bookstore, I just came across the Book of the Subgenius, which had a picture of the Lord and Savior of the Church of the Subgenius, which is J.R. Bob Dobbs, which is a piece of clip art from the 1950s of this smiling man with his pipe, which you've probably seen around because they put it everywhere. And I just started reading that book, and I could not stop cackling the entire night. It was one of the funniest things I'd ever read in my entire life. And after that, I was kind of hooked. And if you keep on that path long enough, you also come across Discordianism, which is sort of the hippie older brother of the new wave punk that is the Church of the Subgenius. So they're connected on a spiritual level. So once you get to them, that gets you down that rabbit hole. And the Moorish Orthodox Church is also in that same general milieu of postmodern satirical religions, I suppose.
Well, they sound fun.
You convinced me. I just added the Book of the Subconscious to my Amazon shopping cart.
Subgenius, but yes.
Subgenius, yes. I just added it to the Amazon shopping cart.
It sounds like a fun, lighthearted take on spirituality. I like it.
It is. It's very fun. I mean, some people would say that's also in a bit poor taste, but that's fun for me too. So that works out.
I get that all the time about my show.
Now, Joni, you mentioned conspiracy theories and spirituality kind of in the same breath there. What do you think of the notion that conspiracies always lead to spirituality?
I think that it's very hard to be a dogmatic rationalist and believe in a conspiracy theory, because conspiracy theories on some level require something de facto superhuman. If they are out there and they are doing this, they must be more than the common everyday person. So
interesting.
You don't get your hardcore rationalist conspiracy theories, because the hardcore rationalists wouldn't see the guys in the shadows, that sort of thing. So it requires a belief in the supernatural on some level. They may not even call it that, but if you treat the CIA as that big and effective and deadly organization, effectively you treat the CIA as supernatural. So
right, they can do things the ordinary man can't.
Exactly.
Right.
So I would think that you would have to have some sort of spirituality in order to be a conspiracy theorist, which is not a knock or a recommendation for either spirituality or conspiracy theories.
Right.
It's just an observation.
It's like faith. You have to have faith in something.
Yeah.
You know, because it's not a proven thing. It has to be like you've looked at, behind the scenes, and this is the best information, the best inner workings of the machine that you can determine, whether that's like religion or Bigfoot. That's
well, and I think there's something a little bit different between, say, a 9/11 truther and someone who's hunting reptilians or ghosts or something like that.
Well, it starts out different, but
it always morphs.
Well, it always seems to converge, because you mentioned two kind of disparate things: 9/11 truthism and lizard people, right? But when you look into them, you find that if you go along those roads, they both lead to anti-Semitism. So there is this sort of weird convergence about these things, and it usually goes through, at least, or usually ends up in anti-Semitism. David Icke is the big guy in the whole lizard people conspiracy theory. And one of his big things is saying that the protocols of the elders of Zion is about the lizard people, who are the Jews. So this is why I tend to have a jaundiced eye when it comes to the whole lizard people thing.
So I used to watch David Icke. I just kind of got out of the whole conspiracy thing, but for me, I never really noticed him being anti-Semite, I would notice him saying things like they wear Semitism and Judaism as a mask.
That also goes back to another anti-Semitic thing. One of the big anti-Semitic things is that the Jews, as we know them today, are the fake Jews, and the real Jews were killed by the fake Jews. That's a whole Kazarite thing. So yeah, when people go, oh yeah, they wear Semitism as a mask, that's because they're saying yes, because the Jews that we know are fake Jews. It just leads back to it, unfortunately.
They don't mean, and I'm not familiar, they don't mean that the lizard people wear Judaism as a mask?
That's what they mean. They say lizard people wear Judaism as a mask because they're saying that modern day Jews aren't real Jews.
What if it's just a couple of them?
Well, yeah, see, and
It's just a couple.
I've always taken him more of, not necessarily him, but like the argument in general to mean like the people at the top who are the lizard people or are the satanic pedophiles or whatever, they're Christians, they're Muslims, they're Jews, they're everything. And they just pretend to be that thing, whatever's most popular in their region, so that way they can walk amongst us. But, I can definitely see where some researchers would be saying and getting at what you're getting at, Johnny. My memory of David Icke isn't good enough to say one way or the other, and I've never met the man, so I'm not going to defend him. But that's just what my memory says. And maybe I'm wrong on that, because I didn't give it that thought like you did, actually, where it all ties back to anti-Semitism. I just kind of bought it at face value, like, yes, these people wear their most common religion as a mask. Like, Donald Trump's not really a Christian, he just wears that because it's popular here. So I always thought of it more in that light, but I could give some credence to what you're saying, definitely.
And this is not an original thought of mine, I've got to say. I mean, there are people who look into this for a living, but the evidence that I have seen is pretty conclusive to me, unfortunately. And when you look at the history of conspiracy theories usually explicitly involve anti-Semitism. I mean, the whole Holy Blood, Holy Grail thing. Back in the Middle Ages, the conspiracy was that Jews were poisoning the water supply and stealing babies and shit like that. The same stuff that we see today attributed to lizard people or the Trilateral Commission was attributed to Jews 500 years ago, unfortunately. So that's the thing. Which is not to say there isn't weird shit around. I mean, let me just be on record. I am a fervent believer there is weird shit around. It's just that most of the popular conspiracy theories, unfortunately, tend towards anti-Semitism.
So do you think, because this is what I tend to do with conspiracy theories, right? Like, let's take the reptilians. I look at the reptilians and then I look at biblical references to great whales. I look at how the serpent wasn't, from the Bible, wasn't explicitly said to be Satan or Lucifer or whatever it may be, but it was a humanoid-like creature. So I think that even just through evolution, maybe, who knows, intelligent design, whatever it could be, either way, we could have some creature who is reptilian in form and able to do what we would call superhuman, but then over time, because there was one guy who looked like a Jew that was a reptilian, then down the road it turns into that. What do you think of that? Is that just crazy?
I don't know about crazy. It's just unnecessary. I don't see the burning need for that thesis, if that makes sense.
Right.
It doesn't seem to explain anything that can't be explained some other way.
Fair enough.
It's almost like the lizard person theory would be more credible if they left Judaism out of it.
Well,
it's like, why do you keep having to insert the Jews? It seems like, and I don't know enough about this, but just from what I'm gathering here, it seems like
there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of it in there. Yeah. A lot of anti-Jewish stuff. And, I never really thought of it that way until you said it this way, because I never looked into the debunking. It was just something I would do while I smoked a joint getting ready for bed,
Right.
So go ahead, Bill.
Here's a thought. What if And again, this is, maybe this is more like in the realm of my show than a free speech media round table. What if the lizard people are anti-Semitic, and so they took the form of Jewish people to turn all the rest of the humans against them? Just throwing it out there. And so, and not all Jewish people are lizard people, but a couple of them. And now we've passed the judgment on to all the whole, everybody is Jewish. That seems not fair.
Which that was kind of what I was getting at. You just said it a lot cleaner than I did.
Okay.
I would like to make a recommendation, though. If you do enjoy the aesthetics of this conspiracy theory, there's a movie, Iron Sky.
Okay.
It's by a Finnish director. It's a well, the first one was done about like 10 years ago, and essentially it's President Sarah Palin versus moon Nazis.
Yes, that was a great movie.
It is a great movie, but what I'm really recommending is the sequel, Iron Sky 2: The Coming Race, all about the lizard people. It is fantastic. It's a very, very fun, exciting action movie. So that's my recommendation. Iron Sky 2: The Coming Race, all about the lizard people. If you know about the history of conspiracy theories, it's one of those great Easter egg laden things. Like, I know that one. They're talking about.
Cool. They're like sneaking Bigfoot and like the pyramids and stuff in there, just like little references, like all the.
Well, in this case, sneaking Vril in there and stuff like that. So,
okay,
which is nice for.
Yeah, the Vril, the whole idea that we're able to like transfer what was it exactly? The Vril was the energy that was given off by the pure race or something like that.
It was basically the force for a underground race of super beings. Which is from a science fiction novel written back in the 1800s, which I just always love that's the origin of that whole thing.
Which honestly, that sounds about right. They made up that whole thing kind of from nothing. They just pulled it out of air and fiction, and an obvious children's story, or not but fun story.
I mean, it's no worse and no better than people going on about how the Matrix is real nowadays. People take the metaphors they're given. And so people back then were given this metaphor from this rollicking sci-fi novel called The Coming Race, and they ran with it and said, wouldn't it be cool if this actually worked, if this actually happened?
Yeah, I don't know that the Matrix is real. I do know that it's one of the greatest Gnostic tales of our time. Showing that this is not everything is as it seems, and even though you think you know how it looks, it may not really be that way. So it's I don't know if we're there yet, but I know that eventually we could be there. Either we're in a simulation now, we're going to create a simulation that people will be stuck in and not know they're in, or we're going to die off as a species before that,
And the math supports you, I believe. I remember seeing something about how the odds of us actually being in a simulation right now are fairly high.
And they get higher as we get better, as we are better able to simulate things.
Right.
Yeah.
It was like Elon Musk was saying, like, well, once we develop full-on simulations of stuff like Earth, well, it's pretty likely that we're one of them. Like, it's hard to deny that that's not possible once we can ourselves create that.
It is. And so I guess that brings up a different question here. Do you think, because I've thought a lot about psychedelics and what, naturally occurring pharmacopoeia really mean for us and why we have such profound experiences and life-altering experiences on them. Do you think they're some kind of like an upgrade button that the simulation gives us? So like you can take this thing and it'll help make your mission a little clearer?
I tend to go with the Terence McKenna hypothesis in that we were the monkeys who ate the mushrooms, that psychedelics are the reason that we did evolve. So I wouldn't say it's so much that it's an upgrade given to us. It was a mutation that our distant chimp ancestors found that made us into proto-humans today. So that's why we have that resonance to them. That would be my personal take on that.
So then you are along the thought process that we evolved with mushrooms, the stoned ape hypothesis.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
And I have no real, strong evidence for that. It just sounds good to me. So.
Yeah. No, I get that. I'm along that same line too. I tend to buy into the idea that this is both a simulation and there has been evolution. Like they're not mutually exclusive. You can have a simulation where things are set up to progress along a certain timeline, and there are different factors that can affect how that progression takes. It's all just coding. I mean, there are people now who can make video games where you click one button, it takes the whole story one way and then a different way. And so I tend to buy into, and that's again because of my spirituality, that this is some type of a simulation, and then evolution does exist, but it's programmed in. And I think that a lot of these naturally occurring pharmacopoeia are here to help us along that progression.
It's like somebody's playing Age of Empires with their lives.
Right? Yeah. But you don't realize it, but you're in complete control back home.
Yeah.
Well, now that I'm thinking about it, one of the things that programmers do nowadays is they do sort of farm out programs. Like they'll run a simulation of something walking and then have a bunch of different programs try to walk in that simulation. Most of them don't, but a few do. And those programs that do walk are paired with other programs randomly to basically evolve up better walkers in the simulation.
No shit.
Yeah. I mean, you can see videos of this on YouTube. It's actually kind of fun to watch. I just wonder if we are a simulation, what special thing that our fifth dimensional overlords are farming us to make. What is the?
Oh no, I don't think that's the case. I don't think we're being farmed. I think we're here out of free will to learn, to experience. I don't think this is a prison planet.
Well, I would say that I didn't say prison plan. I mean, what if it is a simulation, but we're AI? What if?
What are they trying to get out of the simulation? They're trying to learn something. Like, what's the goal of this experiment?
And when you look at the stuff that they're trying to make in our reality, doing this stuff, it's fairly mundane. They're not trying to answer big questions. They're trying to design better widgets. Maybe the entire purpose of our reality is to design the better seventh dimension equivalent of a paper shredder or something. That's what all of human history is for. All our art, all our science, all our pornography is a way of shredding Zimbelbaxes better for the people who started this run. That's what it is.
It could be. It could be.
Develop a better shoe.
Yes.
Right. we developed the best golden tooth possible with our billions of years on this planet. So
no, but it's true.
It could be
time
true.
is so it doesn't matter in a simulation though. Like it could be billions of years. Like that, that becomes so irrelevant in a simulation. Like, let's run it at high speed for the first 4 billion years, and then we'll play the next, 900 million years at regular speed.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And you can also rerun simulations over and over again, which may explain some of the years I've had, because they certainly don't.
Or parallel universes, different simulations.
Sort of a Groundhog Day scenario where I swear I've done this before.
Yeah,
I've had quite a few days like that, and then it's also weird when you really devote your mental attention to something, and then it comes true, or you get that phone call that you were waiting on, or whatever it may be. I really think that in some ways you can make changes to the simulation by connecting with it. And I think that a lot of these, to bring it back to the naturally occurring pharmacopoeia, I think a lot of that stuff has a hand in it, helping you to connect with it, because the Earth has its own frequency. I forget what it's called, but it's 5.8 or 5.7 hertz, and it's the Schumann resonance, and that's the frequency of the Earth. You can literally get yourself to vibe with the Earth, and it brings you more in peace. Well, and that's why seasonal affective disorder, like we up in New England, places where you get snow, when it's the wintertime, that vibration coming from the earth is dampened because of the snow. That's why I think seasonal affective disorder happens, is because you're no longer in tune with the earth. I think that our frequencies really affect us in ways that people don't ever take the time to understand.
That's probably true. Something I was just thinking of. Okay, if all of that applies to us, if we're a simulation, as you say, psychedelics are our way of, say, hacking the matrix, as it were. That logically means that eventually, through the process of progress in computers and video games, stuff like that, we are eventually going to reach the point where Mario will pick up a mushroom on his own and eat it.
Mm-hmm.
Think of it. We're going to eventually get a Mario or Daisy or Luigi or whatever video game character you care to name, who's eventually going to be that complex that it's going to pick up one of the power-ups that we leave around in the game on its own and try to hack itself into some sort of upgrade. Which, I don't know, this fills me with a nice warm feeling to think about that.
It's interesting to think. I'm not religious or theistic in any way, right? I'm not even an atheist. I'm just agnostic. Like I'm not. I consider myself too small in the universe to know whether there's like a creator or a simulator or a plan or any of that. And I think that most of the time it's not the most important thing to worry about, though it's a great time to think about. But if there is some kind of a creator, and if we as humans are constantly striving to create the more and more complex, it's like we're trying to, in a certain way with AI and all this stuff, we're trying to make gods out of ourselves. Whether we believe in them or not. It does seem inevitable that would happen, that you would create something so complicated we're talking about crossing over codes here. We're going to take this code and have it interact with that code and see if they can walk together in this program. That's not even us solving the problem. Like, it kind of is, but we're just putting two elements that work together, and they're having almost like a chemical reaction that creates a whole new thing. Like, the evolution is almost being taken out of our hands by our own creations.
Well, it goes back to the whole Taoism thing. The best things you create aren't the things you actually create. You just get the right intentions and let things happen.
Put the two elements in the same room, let them fall together. That is interesting.
And one thing that Hinduism has really taught me is separate yourself from the result. If you have the right intentions and you really devote yourself to that task, just whatever is the end result is the end result. It's okay because you learned something, you did something. Like let's say, I've got this bill to end no-knocks, right? Be disconnected from the end. Even if it doesn't pass, started the conversation, got people to start questioning that relationship. That's important. Right. If the citizens initiative I got going on doesn't work, we did all these other things that are very important along the way. And the final end goal, if you get so hung up on that, then you're going to miss all the sweet moments along the way that are actually more important than that final thing.
Yeah, and failing at something like that, like if your bill to end no-knocks doesn't go through right away, that doesn't have to be the end of the journey. It doesn't have to be the result. That's the first try or something. It doesn't, if you consider that, well, it failed, that was the result, is it didn't go through, and now it's over, it's like, well, are you not going to do you not care about no-knocks anymore? You can keep trying if you accept it, like, well, we made this much progress. Okay, now we've made this much progress toward it. Now we've made this much progress toward it. If you just hold on to that intention and keep doing the thing and not worry too much about, like, what was the results you got last time, I don't know. You can. I think most goals you can get to. There is a point where it becomes insanity, but good intentions go a long way. Like, I don't think it's insanity. You could try. If you died on the hill of ending no-knock warrants, I'd be proud of you, bro. Like, really, I wouldn't say this is a crazy person. I'd say this guy really, really cares about this, and he's making more and more people aware of it. Nobody's gonna shit on you for that.
You'd be surprised, actually. I get shit on quite a bit. I get more hate mail than anybody you personally know, I'm sure.
You probably do, actually. I believe that. Why do people hate is it the no knock thing specifically they don't like? Why don't
It's
people like that?
the no knock, and I got a lot of people who are not happy that I want to rein in governor power. We have a lot of folks up here who are like, no, I'd rather live. And I'm like, so you wouldn't take care of your health if the governor stopped forcing you? Like, what are you saying? You know, and they're all young, healthy people too. Like, it's not like I've got these 80-year-olds who are like, no, you're crazy. You know, it's all young people who are healthy. The old folks are like, yes, I've got a couple years left. I want to live my life. You know,
Right.
it's really kind of weird. Like, my grandparents, for instance, want these lockdowns over. They want family to be able to come see them without having to worry. And, you know, they want to be able to go out to eat. My grandfather has one lung, so he can't wear a mask. Otherwise, he can't breathe. So he does the whole face shield thing. And it still just doesn't work well for him because it's still restrictive a little bit. But point being that the hate I get is all because I want to give people back their individual freedom. Like, everything I do is about reducing the government. You know, and it's not like I'm getting rid of Social Security. I'm not saying we're getting rid of public school lunches for poor kids. You know, I'm going after some of the most egregious things the government does. No knock raids and these lockdowns, these government mandates, the governor mandates that she can just do anything she wants. There is no recourse for the legislature right now. And there is also no time limit as to when this emergency can stop. We are 9 or 11 days away from our 1-year anniversary here in Maine. That's a long time to go without representation, you know. So my argument right now is that we actually don't even have a government. We do not have a government in Maine that is functioning. We have a monarchy because for 11 months and 3 weeks, we have had one person making all of the important decision with their bureaucrats. You know, we had elections during this time to elect new representatives. They haven't even been able to represent us yet.
Right. And it's crazy too, because it's a whole year of essentially ruling by decree.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there has been no attempt in any state that I've seen to get, like, you know, a referendum from the people on what they think they should do. Now, and I'm not going to say that I think that every state would have the same result or I would agree with the results, but I'd be a lot more okay with it if each state had a referendum or something that, hey, do you guys want to lock down or not? I still think that doesn't justify telling people they have to stay in their homes, but that's just at
least it's something.
At least you have consent of the governed rather than this false pretense of consent of the governed where like, you have consent of the governed because you voted for me once 4 years ago. Now I can just write whatever law I want and keep you in your home and tell you what to wear on your face and how far to stand away from people and who can touch the ladle at Thanksgiving. It's like, God damn, it's getting crazy because once you have that power, man, maybe every single rule was fucking life-saving. But once you have the power to tell people how far away they can stand from each other, what they can wear on their faces, what they can't wear on their faces, who can touch the ladle at Thanksgiving, and you feel like you can enforce that with, you know, police officers, well, most people don't see that power. You pretty much end up with that power is now in the hands of the next governor and the next governor and the next governor. And once you get enough of a scumbag who's like, well, you know, there was this one emergency where we were able to do this. Maybe we can use that precedent. And really use that against these people. It's just a slippery slope. I don't think that these laws saved a lot of lives. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But even if they did, you have no right to do it. You just don't. We can't make people kings state by state. I don't support it anyway. Fucking A.
Johnny, I'm not letting the cat out of the bag here by saying you're a libertarian socialist. So what is your take? Because I haven't, honestly, I'll be honest, I haven't listened to enough of your show to really get what your take on the lockdowns are. Are they different than ours? What is your basis philosophy? What is your take on this?
Well, I come from a perspective that's different from a lot of people, I suppose. And it's not really connected with being part of the LibSoc caucus. Lots of libertarians support masks. They support social distance. They support all of that. Now, when you get into the question of actual mandates, yeah, that's not great. It's not great for all the reasons you guys just said. Those are not great. They can be bad. They can be slippery slope. They can be used against you in another way, even if it's all being done perfectly right now, which it is not, because we know this. We know the government's doing it very badly. So I don't think there is a quote unquote libsock position on this. But in my day job, I'm a home health aide. I deal with immunocompromised people all the time. That's what I do. So people being, and I'm not, this is not saying, I'm not saying that being against a lockdown's mandates is being cavalier, but there are libertarians who are very cavalier with other people's health, who are not taking what I consider rather common sense precautions to protect people that don't have their own defenses. And I don't have a firm answer to that, but it gets me nervous. It gets me anxious because I know that there are people out there who depend on everyone else being kind of healthy. They don't have the ability to be healthy on their own. There are all sorts of people out there who simply don't have good immune systems. And a callous Darwinian, well, we should let them die so that people can get back to work, doesn't sit right with me. Now, I'm not saying there should be a government solution to all that, but in terms of personal talk, it doesn't sit right with me.
Well, what would you say to this? So people who have immunocompromised systems there, what they should do is get their groceries delivered, drive up and have their groceries put in their car for them. Don't go into places where they know people aren't going to be wearing masks and distancing, and take a little bit more control over their own lives. Not we should kill them. I'm completely opposed to that. I'm just saying, if we give them the responsibility to take care of themselves and allow other people to just take care of themselves, do you think they would figure it out, or what do you think?
It's not a question of responsibility, unfortunately. There are very responsible people out there. However, being disabled in America is kind of expensive. That's the problem, and that's also the reality of it. There are many people here who simply don't have the time and resources to live as bubbled as you suggest. I mean, if you are forced to have a roommate, you are dependent upon your roommate keeping you alive in some cases. If you don't have a car and you don't live in a place where they can deliver at a rate that you can afford, then what are you going to do? What you're saying is great if people have the resources to do it. If they don't,
I would say that in that case you just put up there, where you live on your own, you don't have a car, you live too far for them to deliver. How are you getting your groceries in the first place? Someone must be taking you there. So you can still just do the order over the phone, online, whatever it may be, have them bring it out to the car. Hannaford, Walmart, all places do that now. So there are options, and that's, from my understanding, a free service. So would that not be a workaround? I mean...
Well, I am confident that everyone who would be affected by this is working around the best they can. And I don't know if all of them are in favor of mask mandate either. I suspect they aren't. But there's this feeling I get among too many libertarians that because it isn't happening to them, really, directly to them, that it's not really happening, that they shouldn't be concerned by it. And yes, there are very good liberty arguments against certain things. And I mean, I'm convinced by many of them. And I'm not saying anything against those specific arguments. But there does seem to be a sense, not that people are soberly weighing the pros and cons and saying, yes, this is dangerous, but letting the government have this much power is more dangerous. There is a sense I get among certain people, not here, but I'm saying that they're already predisposed to go, I don't wanna, and then look for excuses not to do it. That their basic conceit.
Well, I think I don't wanna is a pretty good reason. I mean, I don't wanna. That's in a way that's like the basis of libertarianism is I don't want to tell other people what to do and I don't want to be told what to do. And if I'm not hurting you, so then the argument would have to be you have to prove that you're hurting someone, which you could only do in the time period of like 2 weeks post haste because you you need that disease and to culminate inside a person and actually start to show, and then you would have to track it back and prove that. So there's just too much there for me to say that because I have lung issues. My grandfather has lung issues. You know, I am actually affected by coronavirus. If I get it, I'm going to the hospital. I may not make it. I'm not in good health for a 29-year-old. But that's because I was an asshole and I joined the military and put myself in burn pits over in Afghanistan. So don't feel sorry for me because I'm a recovering terrorist, as I like to say.
I love that.
But my argument is, and I agree with what you're saying. I do think there are a lot of libertarians who just go, no, fuck you, I'm not doing that. And they don't look at maybe this is the best thing for you to do. They just go, no, I'm not doing that. So I will agree with that. And I do think that sometimes I actually put off that vibe you're talking about. I think I was just putting it off in that last minute tirade I went on, to be fair. So I do think that that's something we need to be careful of. And I think that one thing we as libertarians have done kind of a bad job on is talking about the statistics of the coronavirus. I know Tom Woods has done a good job with that, but he's really one of the few who's done a good job with publishing those numbers. And I think that a lot of us, and I myself included, have just kind of fallen back to the liberty argument. And people are like, all right, cool, liberty, but there's a pandemic. And I feel like it's almost on us to prove like, hey, this isn't a pandemic like you were told it is. Look at the numbers, they've come down. Look at the mask mandates, look at the business closures. There's no correlation to cases. Clearly, we can't do as much to stop this as we think we can. Maybe we need to take a different route, you know. So
At least a voluntary route.
A voluntary route, and
At least.
Johnny, you're right. There are some people who can't afford to, get a ride into town and get their groceries and all of these types of things. Like it is expensive to be disabled. I know my grandfather pays a lot of money a year because he's disabled. Just that he should,
On the other hand, we have libertarian arguments for that. Why is it so expensive to be disabled?
Totally, 100%. Yeah.
Cartelizes healthcare and various other things. So there are ways around that. I mean, there are arguments in that sense.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't want to change the topic earlier when you mentioned that, but I was thinking like, well, there's, the state does cause some of these problems. If we got rid of that, it'd be easier for these people. We'd all have a lot more money if they weren't taxing us into oblivion,
Right.
that we could use towards those kind of services. But yeah, sorry, that's a change of topic almost to go into that aspect of it when we're talking about the lockdown aspect.
I think there is a sense on both sides of this debate of a sort of hopelessness as well. We keep on trying to, we either say, well, if we do this, this might work, or this isn't working, so we're going to do this. And there just seems to be this big thing all around us that we can't really acknowledge because we can't really wrap our head around. There is a big disease in America right now. I mean, and whatever we do, people are going to die. People are going to get hurt. I mean, I wish we were New Zealand sometimes in some respects. I wish we were South Korea sometimes in some respects, because they seem to be able to lock things down for a short time and thus enjoy benefits later on. But we're not that. And that is sometimes a hard pill to swallow, that we don't have a way of fixing this really. That all the mask mandates or not having mask mandates, all the triple wearing of masks or not wearing masks, I don't know if it really would affect things as much. I mean, I do the things. I wear the mask, I social distance because I feel like I'm doing something.
Danger actively going into people's homes. If anybody is, should be responsible for that kind of stuff. It's like somebody who's going into compromised people's homes all day long. Like that makes sense. And like, I personally, I don't know how much they actually help, but at least there's like a polite ritual to it. Well,
it's a
I
polite
rarely
ritual.
do it.
And
I'll stay 6 feet away from people, but I don't wear masks.
I mean, I also find it somewhat interesting how many people are going, thank God this happened. I love the idea of wearing masks and staying away from people. There are a lot of people who are really happy about having the excuse to stay away from other people, which I mean, they don't want it to happen this way, but they're not sad they have the excuse now.
Right. Yeah, so when this whole thing first started, I was actually going into the local Hannaford because they were pretty good about giving you an exception to not wear a mask. They'd say, all right, no, you need to wear a mask. Oh, you have health thing. All right, go ahead. And everybody in there was wearing a mask. So I would go there because I have lung issues. I can't wear a mask for more than a couple minutes at a time. Otherwise, I get lightheaded. I get dizzy. I have breathing issues even when I'm not wearing a mask. So that's where I would go because I felt the safest, if you would. If this is real, if I really could get injured from this, then I'm going to go to Hannaford because I know I will be the only person, aside from maybe some other old lady, not wearing a mask. And now I go to the grocery store, and it's been this way for months and months now. They're like, no, you need to wear a mask. I'm like, but Americans with Disabilities Act, that's federal law. This is government mandate. That's federal law. That trumps this. And they don't care. They're like, no, this is the law. And I'm like, no, it's not. So one thing that's actually really pissed me off during all this is the business owners. I have not heard a single customer or sales associate. I haven't heard a business owner. I haven't heard anyone go, oh, well, it's store policy, so you have to do it. They all go, it's the law, or it's mandated. It's like they don't have any control over their own business anymore. They're just, no, it's the law. We have to do it. We don't have a say. We don't get to decide how we run our company. We don't get to decide what health risks our patient or our associates get to take or our customers want to take. You don't get to make those decisions for yourself. The government's making them for you.
Well, also, I imagine a few of them don't want to own that responsibility. Because for every person like yourself who does have legitimate health issues with wearing a mask, there are other people who are just going to say, look, I'm blonde, I can't have a Chinese virus, and start yelling and breathing heavy at people. So I imagine it being able to say it's the law is a comfort, maybe not a good comfort, maybe not a legitimate comfort, but a comfort to some of those store owners in order to deal with people like that.
So,
well, I'm sure it is, but as soon as I tell them, like, well, you realize there's a federal law and this isn't actually law, they still go, no, it's the law.
Right.
Like, so I guess my point is that, one, they're hiding behind it, and two, they're lying to themselves, and they're not actually protecting their customers or their associates. They're just bowing down. They're not doing this out of the goodness of their heart. They're doing it because they're afraid of the repercussions.
Or they don't want to deal with the repercussions right there, which is not an excuse, really. It's just
yeah. So to your point, when the mask mandate was first proposed in my town, I went on the radio. My friend has the local morning show, and I went on the radio and I was like, listen, we really shouldn't be mandating this kind of thing. And that was the biggest argument they made. I was on the phone with the lady from the news. She called in, and they said that business owners, we want to pass the mandate because business owners, they don't want to have to argue with the people about whether they should wear the mask or not. Like, basically, if we pass the law, the business owner can just say, well, it's the rule now, so you have to do it. And I just thought it was kind of silly because now they're just going to argue about whether it's a legit law. Those business owners are still going to have an argument. They get to, I guess, hide behind the law rather than saying, hey, listen, these are the rules of my business. If you don't like it, get out, which they have every right to do. And I'm fine with that, but hiding behind this law that's not really a law. And then you're still going to have an argument with the people who really want to argue with you.
Right.
And I think ultimately it should just be a matter of, when it comes down to that, listen, these are the rules. No shirt, no service. It's the best argument they have for the masks. And if people want to mandate their masks, then have your masks. And then if you don't want to mandate your masks, we can have other businesses where those people, if they can't go to your store where you mandate masks, can go. And people will kind of they'll align with the groups that they're aligned with. Listen, if there was a grocery store where you didn't have to wear a mask and there was one where you did, and I could pick, I'd pay a little extra to not go wear the mask. I probably wouldn't pay exorbitantly, but like, fuck it. Even if they were going to charge me extra for that, which I don't think that they necessarily would. I think they probably would have no real reason to.
And conversely, if I was given the choice between a maskless supermarket and a mask supermarket, I would probably choose the mask supermarket.
Absolutely. And I think that just makes sense. And then let's say the CDC or whatever government agency, I think that the FDA or the health department for health inspections for restaurants should do the same thing. We could have a totally voluntary system, right? Where essentially, here's our government standards. If you want the stamp of approval from the government, you can hang this window in your wall. You get a big shiny gold ribbon, blue ribbon, gold sticker, whatever it is that you hang in your window. Everybody says, wow, this is safe. The CDC says they're following every coronavirus precaution. You can open it you can do whatever you want, and we'll give you the big shiny sticker. And then we can have next door a place that doesn't want to follow it, and those people can go there. You just don't get the sticker, and people are like, hey, these, and maybe even go as far, and I don't support this, but it would happen probably. Maybe you have to put one that says we don't follow government standards. We just, we're voluntary here.
Well, that sticker idea,
with that.
People are doing that. I mean, there is some sort of, I remember seeing a push, like a bunch of Hollywood stars saying, you see this means that this establishment follows all the health code guidelines. Make sure you only go into places like that. So that is being done to some extent.
But it's almost to the point where if your business doesn't follow those things, they'll arrest you. And I'm like, how about we just let those people put a different sticker in their window?
Yeah.
Because I just believe in voluntarism.
You're just a shill of big sticker, aren't you? That's what it is.
Dude, I'm trying to sell stickers, by the way. Go to billsellstickers.com. Doesn't exist. But yeah, no, I think that there's a way to do it where you can have people who are willing to take more risks, take their risks, and people who aren't, we'll have spots where there's a direct market incentive for people to have the safest grocery store. You know what I'm saying? For people to have the safest bar or restaurant or whatever it is. Like, there's a direct market incentive, especially if we're going to have the government pushing propaganda or media pushing propaganda. Like every time someone is 20 dies of the virus, it's the biggest headline on CNN. It's like, okay, so it does happen. Mostly that's not what happens. And like, they're kind of trying to scare younger people with it. I won't pretend. And maybe rightly so. I don't think so, but maybe rightly so.
Right.
Maybe I don't know all the information. And personally, I'm with Harrison. I think that we need to look more at the statistics. In the beginning of the pandemic, I was very much listening to Tom Woods, who had like a new person with new statistics every single day for like weeks and weeks on end. And he'd be like, we're not going to talk about the virus all week, I promise. And then he'd be like, you know what? God started it. It's the only news. We're talking about it. He's a hothead like me, though. He goes off.
Yeah, I think we should be looking at, right now, what is the flu to coronavirus numbers compared to what they were for the last couple of years? I think that is something we really should be looking at, because if the tests are coming back that the flu is corona, well, that's an issue. If we're no longer having what we used to know as the flu, regardless of which strain it was, there's a bunch of flus that just get called the flu. But if we're no longer having that and corona is kind of taking its place as the new seasonal issue that we have going on, we need to know that, because then we need to start readjusting our shots that we get every year. So I think we should be looking at that.
Well, I don't know if that would be conclusive, because it seems to me that every precaution we take against the coronavirus would also be a precaution against the flu.
Yeah.
Right, so, but I agree that the precautions are pretty much the same, but like the shot that we get is a little different. This would be stuff not necessarily for us, but more for the decision makers, the healthcare professionals to know. So because you're right, there's a lot of overlap between the flu and coronavirus as far as things we can do to take care of ourselves to prevent it.
I mean, if we want to be, buzzjoys about this, buzzkills, I should say, if we adopted a more Asian attitude towards this stuff, and more people wore face masks when they had the cold or had the flu as just a matter of course, which is like the norm in Japan and China, places like that, we'd have less cases of the flu and the cold. People would be overall healthier, but we don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it'd be a cultural voluntary norm.
Yeah, it'd be. I personally, I think that would not be a bad norm to adopt.
So, and here's let me give you a little taste of this, right? So this is how crazy people are. I have like I said, I got this thing going on trying to reduce governor power. Had a lady comment on our page saying she doesn't think she's going to sign it. She wants to live. So I just asked, I said, you wouldn't take care of your health if the governor wasn't forcing you to? And what do you think the response was? Do you think it was some intelligent response about how we should be respecting the doctors and we should be taking care of each other? No, it was, oh,
All
screw
caps.
you. Like, you know, first, there's no science to anything she's saying. The numbers don't add up. She's young. She's in the least likely group to get affected by this. And of course, she could have health issues, pre-existing conditions. I'm generalizing because she was being a really bad person to me. You know,
I laugh because the conversation's over at that point. You know, like,
exactly.
Oh, screw you! Like, all right, well, there was.
Which was her intention. I mean,
Oh yeah,
she didn't go, oh, screw you, in order to engage with you.
No,
Right.
yeah. That's the tap out if I've ever seen one. They're like, oh, screw you! Like, yeah, we're not doing this. We're not having this conversation.
I just want to put this on record, totally off this current subject, but
Yeah.
things are terrible in Myanmar. We should not go into Myanmar. I just want to put that on the record as something that should be said. Things are very, very bad in Myanmar. We should not go into Myanmar. There's lots of reasons why we shouldn't go into them. The whys don't actually matter. Just we shouldn't go into Myanmar. I just want to put that out there because I don't think that's quite being said enough.
Or Iran or Syria, for the record.
Yes.
And actually, Scott Horton gave a really good reason why we shouldn't be going into China to try and free the Uyghurs. And it was an angle I'd never thought of it from before. But then again, he was saying, look, if we actually look at what the Uyghurs go through compared to what a regular Chinese citizen goes through, they have much looser restrictions than what the average Chinese citizen does. And so now those restrictions are being brought more in line with the regular Chinese citizen. And therefore it's an oppressive totalitarianism, but China is an oppressive totalitarian government. So, and he's saying that the number of people who were being killed, it seems high because it's a small population, but comparatively to the amount of regular Chinese who were killed, it's still lower than average. So from that point of view, it's not...
the Uyghurs are getting special treatment.
In a sense, yes. Now, I haven't looked into it. I'd never thought of it from that point of view. But when Scott Horton says something, you generally go, you've probably done more research on this than I have. But he did end that sentence that he was saying there by going, I haven't really looked into it, so I could be wrong about all this.
I don't... He very well may be right. I myself have not looked too much into it. I just don't see a tactical... I mean, there is a reason if the truth is the truth and there's a reason to say the truth, but I don't see a tactical reason to minimize what's going on with the Uyghurs. I mean, even if it is more terrible than we could ever know, that's very bad and we should do things about it. We being, humanity, that's still not a reason for the U.S. to intervene militarily.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, and I kind of thought that before, at least at this point. But I think, like Harrison said, never from that angle. I wouldn't have. But I don't know if that's true. That sounds dubious at best in my eyes. But it's Scott Horton, so it's hard to say it's bullshit.
He said too, it's think about who is the U.S. war machine putting propaganda towards right now? China. They're putting the war propaganda with this Uyghur thing. It's them putting war propaganda towards China. They're causing a genocide. We need to go free these people. And so from that side, he's like, I always get skeptical when the war machine starts telling me who I should be skeptical of. And so, yeah, I think that's something that I would want to look into more before I go, this is what's happening. But it's one of those really big if true things,
Yeah.
you know?
Can I? Sorry, go ahead.
Well, my rule of thumb is if gray zone is saying it's true, it's probably not true.
Mm-hmm.
And gray zone is very much into saying China can do no wrong. So I have to assume China's doing something wrong, which doesn't seem to be that controversial an opinion.
Right.
It's China.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and it's not that he's saying they're doing nothing wrong. He's saying comparatively, they're still in line with how horrible they treat their average citizen.
Right.
You know, so saying it went from being they were treated better to now they're treated the same. And that's what's being spun as this genocide. So I don't know. I haven't. Honestly, it's one of those things that's so far away from me. I don't feel like I can do anything about it. So I don't really devote my mental energy to it. I focus
And the
more
information
on here. You know, what can I do?
Information's
Here?
been controlled.
Right.
I want to bring something up that's related to the control of information that is happening here that I don't want to slip away from me because I noticed this morning and I almost forgot about it. But you guys will have thoughts on this. It's directly relevant to lockdowns right before this. Facebook is not bringing up coronavirus memories.
Really?
Yes. So I have today, I had looked a few weeks ago to see what my first memories were going to be of. I searched on my page, coronavirus, all this. I had to go through and find it. March 4th. It's today. It's not brought up in my memories. I had to go back and find it. So speaking of controlling information, then when you go to share it, it says this is a post about COVID. So Facebook is not going to be bringing up in your memories page. And I kind of predicted this a few weeks ago. I was like, I bet you Facebook isn't even going to put those memories. But yes, they are not. And I want that. What do you guys think about that? I wanted to put that out on the record. I want to ask you your opinions.
I think it's an overreaction, but I think it's also a rather understandable overreaction. Facebook is an imperfect platform in so many ways. But dinosaur-like, they have decided to lurch in one direction. I happen to agree with the broadest possible terms of that direction, but that there's going to be a lot of collateral damage with that. I have a hard time summoning up a lot of outrage for it. It's a dumb thing, but I just have a hard time summing up outrage for that particular thing. Because for every reasonable COVID memory there's going to be half a dozen that are going to directly blame it on lizard people. They're going to say that the lizard people are causing COVID, because there are a lot of crazies out there who put stuff like that on Facebook.
But they put them out there today too. I don't see why it's different a year ago. I get you. Well, I just don't see why. So, and to me, it's just silly. And I'm not outraged. To me, it's like, it's just blatant. Like, okay, these people have an agenda. They're trying to make sure that they can control the flow of information. And I'm just going to make a little post on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter saying, hey, go check your Facebook memories, because there's stuff where if maybe you were against the lockdowns at the beginning, maybe you weren't. Go check, see how you were thinking and feeling then. Because
Facebook is a entity trying to hit a bullseye 100 yards away by putting on a blindfold and throwing sledgehammers at random directions. This is true of any large corporation. That's what they do. They are not finely honed machines.
Right.
They have dumb algorithms that do dumb things. This is one of those dumb things.
They use a machete for everything.
Yes, attached to a. This is true of any large. But that is a dumb thing, and we should laugh at the dumb thing, because that is a dumb thing.
I'm just going to point it out to people so they know.
Yes.
What do you think, Harrison? There we go.
That's the alarm you were telling us about. So, just to fill you in, Johnny, he's getting fire alarm tests done in his apartment building today. That's what that is.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. So he's muting himself. But I think it's a really big overreaction And I think Johnny is right. There are probably some good reasons, but I think overall it's that they're lighting the whole forest on fire to take out one robber. You know, there's one guy who stole a diamond and he's fucking hiding, and he's the guy that posted something messed up about coronavirus that they don't want out. Meanwhile, everyone else is just out enjoying the beautiful sunshine, sharing pictures of, you know, them and their spouse watching Tiger King and, you know, the arts and crafts pizzas and whatnot that they learned how to make. And then there's the one guy who's like, this fucking virus, blah, 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 you know. And I think it's a really big overreaction that's taking away a lot of people's good memories, that the only things that actually got them through the last year.
You saying that remind me 2 years ago of the spate of news reports I read, people burning down their own houses, trying to get rid of like wasp nests in their carport, stuff like that. So it's a bit of a human nature right there. We do tend to burn down the forest to get the one thing.
Yep.
I want to be clear too. They're not censoring all memories. They're just not. And I don't mean censoring is probably not even quite the right word, but they're not blocking all memories. They're just blocking
COVID
any
ones.
memories of mentioned. Let's say probably coronavirus,
Right?
or whatever they were calling it, the Wuhan virus at the beginning because it came out of the Wuhan province or whatever. I think it's blocking all of that. I don't think that there's, because I have all my other memories from March 4th of all the years. I just don't have. I know the first time I posted about the virus was last year, March 4th.
Right. Well, how many people do you think were sitting there going hashtag COVID lockdowns and sharing a picture of them and their girlfriend watching a movie? You know, those memories won't pop up.
I see what you're saying.
They have nothing to actually do with Corona. They're not talking about stats. They're not talking about masks. They're just saying, hey, me and my lover watching a movie, hashtag COVID lockdowns.
During the lockdown or because the COVID situation or whatever. Yeah, totally.
When did you guys first hear about COVID?
January or late December.
Yeah.
Because I remember late December. I remember it was like maybe right before or right after Christmas, hearing about this outbreak of a disease in China. And I'd seen Outbreak. I knew how that movie ended. And I was just going, oh, great. It was just because a lot of people didn't seem to know about this. I mean, I heard it on like CNN back then, but a lot of people didn't put it together until March that this was a thing that was going to happen.
Yeah. I've never really been convinced that it's all that big of a thing, even when with the numbers being where they're at. I feel like a lot of these people who have allegedly died from COVID died from something else with COVID as a contributor, and then they call it COVID, but really you died from cancer. You know?
They are counting COVID deaths differently than any other kind of death from any disease ever.
Yeah.
They are actively using this. On a death certificate, there's two parts. They're using the second part. If COVID's listed in the second part, they list it as a COVID death. So normally the first part is primary cause of death. Second part would be other contributing factors and comorbidities. But like you died of a heart attack, but yes, you had, long-term high blood pressure. You had this thing, you had that thing. And that would be the secondary category. If COVID is listed in that secondary category, and this even means if somebody had a COVID test 6 months ago, because they're like, well, we don't know what the long-term implications are. So basically, if somebody had a COVID test that came back positive 3 months ago, 6 months ago, recovered or not recovered, you have some long-term conditions. They're like, we don't know if it contributed. So they're playing it safe by throwing that in there as a COVID death because, well, we have to assume it's the worst. That way we can get an accurate count. That's kind of the justification for that.
Right.
It's like we have to assume that COVID contributed to this because otherwise we could be undercounting. So we get the maximum count.
The thing is, I don't know if I would do anything different if I was in charge, which is a very good reason why we should question having one guy or one entity in charge of all this.
Totally. And I know that I would, but I respect that you understand that because like that, to me, that's the biggest problem. Like, and I would probably get a lot of shit for being the guy in charge because I would not do as much. People would be like, why aren't you doing something? I'm like, that's not my job here.
And for people who are, who don't like that position, that are skeptical of having one person in charge of the COVID thing, Trump was that guy. The buck stopped with Trump for 4 years. Trump did everything short of actually physically licking doorknobs himself to bungle our response to this pandemic. No matter how little a thing you think it is, it was still a thing. And Trump did he took out the big book of how to fuck things up, and he followed every single page of it.
So
Yeah,
I don't know.
we got ourselves into
that.
Oh, go ahead, Bill.
I don't know if I would agree with that 100%, but I will say no matter who had been in there, there's going to be a huge group of people who feel that way.
Well, that's true. That is true.
You know,
I really admit that.
So go ahead, Harrison.
I will say that he did very, 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 maybe 1% of things he did right. And that's just because even a dog can sniff his own ass once in a while. So I would say that giving all this money away to corporations and companies who we are willingly not giving our money. You know, we have decided we're not going on cruises. We're not going to movie theaters. And you're going to give them our money anyway.
Airlines.
That's a really big issue. You know, when you tell people you need to change your habits, change your living style, and then you continue to prop up the old style with our money, there's something seriously wrong with that. Even if you don't think taxation is theft, there's something seriously wrong with the idea of telling you to change and then taking your money to make the old way still profitable. And that's what cost us a lot of money. And a lot of people don't care about the national debt. And in some ways, I don't either, because we could declare bankruptcy tomorrow, and we probably should. But when you look at what you have cost the regular person, how much money this has cost us versus how much the big corporations have gained, it's really, really astonishing. And I'm not like someone who's against big corporations. I'm someone who's against cronyism. You know, like I'd have no problem if when Sam Walton started his company, and if somebody calls me out on this, I'm just going to fold. But Sam Walton got absolutely no government handouts or anything like that. Let's just assume, right? Just thought process here. He gets no help along the way. He just has the best process, builds Walmart up to a giant company that employs 1 million people. That's a good thing. That's a big corporation doing good things. Now, the second they start getting all this government money and people stop going to their store, that's no longer good, you know? So I just tend to think that what's really screwed the American people during this, and screwed people all around the world, you know, let's not forget food shortages are going to be caused by this, that are going to kill upwards of millions of people. You know,
and not here.
Yeah, not here, in third world
food.
Countries. Right.
Food's our biggest export.
Yeah, UNICEF is saying that like 1.2 million children will die in the next year from food insecurity caused by the lockdowns. So there's a lot of issues here that, you know, people say like, oh, you just want people to die. And it's like, no, I want poor children to live. I want them to have food. We can take care of the people here. We're a wealthy country. We can figure that out. They can't. They don't have reserves to fall on, you know? So if we're going to get into like the emotional argument, I think we need to care more about those who can't do anything for themselves. The wicked poor that are in Malaysia, in Ethiopia, those places where they need food in order to live. They need that food supply. And I think we're killing them.
Yep.
So we've got probably about 15, 20 minutes left to go here. What do you guys want to talk about?
Anyone running for any public office?
Bill has killed my odds of running for office, but I'm still planning, given a couple of shows I've had with him.
What did you do?
I went on Bill's show.
We can take those down.
I went on Bill's show and I made jokes. That's all I did.
Okay.
He's a very funny guy.
So I am actually going to be running for House of Representatives in Maine, District 122 in 2022. And it's looking like that's going to be what I do. We might end up seeing a gubernatorial run out of me in 2022. Depends on if we get someone better to do that or not. I really think we could. But the idea is it's an educational campaign. You know, we need people to register Libertarian. We're in the middle of a big registration push right now. So we need to hit 5,000 registered members by the end of the year. If we don't hit that, we're no longer a party, you know.
Now, are you guys a minor party that you have to hit that? Or
Yes. So
okay.
the way it works is for any party starting out, you have to hit 5,000 registered members within your first year and 10,000 by the end of your second year. And then after that, you are a party. You're established. You can have your name on the cards. People can vote for you. You have primaries, all that fun stuff.
Cool.
I'm in Pennsylvania, and we're considered a minor party right now, which means that we can get our name on the general ballot. We just can't get our name on the primary ballot, which is fine because we don't usually do primaries anyway. I helped start our local chapter of the Libertarian Party last year, and this will be the first year that we're running candidates. I've got the big list of all the seats open for 2021, so we'll be going over it this Sunday. I'm thinking about constable because A, we don't have a constable in my township right now, so not much competition. And B, the constables in Pennsylvania are essentially freelance law enforcement. They don't really have any set duties aside from protecting polling places. That's their one duty, is protecting polling places, and they can be a process server for local magistrates. They can. As far as I can tell, they're not required to be. So it's a very odd office. So I might be going
an elected law enforcement office.
It's like a law
sheriff.
A bit like sheriff. Sheriff has
A little different.
Yeah, a little different. But yeah, they're elected township by township, not county by county, like a sheriff would be.
Gotcha. What a great title too.
Yes, constable.
Constable Johnny Lemuria. I mean,
Constable Reverend Johnny Lemuria.
Yeah, exactly.
Get a PhD, you really have a full title there.
The Reverend Dr. Constable Johnny Lemuria. At that point, nobody's going to sound more qualified if you're
That's right.
I've already got the Hunter S. Thompson defense going on as well. Do you know about his political run?
No,
I didn't know he
Hunter
ran.
Thompson. He ran on the Freak Power ticket for sheriff back in where he lived. And when he ran, he deliberately shaved his head. This is back in the 60s. He shaved his head so that his opponent, no matter how short their hair was, he could call him a long hair hippie freak. So got that going for me right
That's
now.
awesome.
that's funny. Well, you look like a member of the alt-right, if I do say so myself, you know?
Don't say that.
Messing with you, bro. No, so on my show, I always make the joke that I'm not alt-right, but I always make the joke like, yeah, welcome to the alt-right radio show. Because listen, it's like I've been called such terrible things. I'm like, you know what, call me whatever you want. I don't care. I'm embracing it. It's not true. I'm me.
That is at least a small reason why I am as visibly hippie as I am, I suppose, so that I can ward off people calling me alt-right and racist. No,
or
people
like
with that much
something.
tie-dye in their room are not racist.
You know, I've got like a half sleeve of Batman. I'm a nerd. You know, you don't really meet racist nerds who do shrooms.
Yeah, that's a very small demographic.
Right.
There's got to be one out there, Harrison. And goddamn if it's not you. I'm outing you right now.
The other night we were hanging out doing a show, and David not David. It was Emmanuel. Cash was like, I don't like ice cream, and I was like, well, you're fucking deported then.
Yeah. I suppose I can understand someone not liking pork, as he said. Mm-hmm. And I can understand someone not liking ice cream, but not liking ice cream and pork.
Right.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. That's those reptilians we were talking about.
Yeah.
You know?
They are amongst us. They're in the network.
Now, would it be, so I like to take some of these things that just are kind of silly and stupid and then bring them out to like their, really far reductio ad absurdum end. So would it be considered a NAP violation to kick someone out of your society because they don't like ice cream?
Define society.
Well, that's the kicker, because a society really at the end of the day is just you and the other people who you've agreed to follow certain rules by. are rules with, you know? So like when you go to the barbershop, that's a society. You go to the grocery store, you're all walking, you know, up and down the aisles in the same way. You're distancing, you're following the same rules. That's a society, you
Grocery
know?
store culture.
Right.
Well, yeah,
So,
I would say it's not a NAP violation to ban someone from your business for whatever stupid reason you have. I do draw the line of burning someone out of their house for rum raisin. That doesn't seem to be a bit overkill. But no, I mean, stupid reasons should be reasons enough for banning someone from your private business, I suppose. Uh, that's a bad idea in all sorts of ways, but it's also the least harmful way I know of dealing with that situation.
mhm.
That's
Right.
Yeah.
Exclusion isn't so bad. You know, like it's not good. Like it's not ideal for
It's
whoever's
not
being
great.
excluded, but it's not aggression. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
yeah.
Well, and this is one where libertarians really like to put their foot in their mouth when it comes to like non-discrimination laws, you know, because we see them as, you know, they're coercive. You're telling me that I have to let everybody into my business, even if I don't
What
like
happened
them.
to freedom of association?
Well, the way that I look at it and explain it is, look, if you it's like I'm a white guy, right? If I go into a black-owned business and they hate white people, maybe for good reason, maybe for bad, do I really want to get served by them, or would I rather be told I have to go somewhere else? You know, it's going to be a shitty experience. They're going to spit in my food. Now flip that, right? If I'm a black guy and I go into a place and they have a whites only sign, I know this is not somewhere I want to be. But if I go in there because the government says that they have to allow me, I'm going to get shit service. They're going to spit in my food. Who knows how they're going to treat me? You know, so it's one of those things where, do you want to unknowingly contribute to a racist, or should they just be allowed to be themselves? And then you can make the decision. I don't want to go there. I want to go there. You know, I tend to
Let 'em-
think that those companies wouldn't make it very long if they did that.
Let them wear their scarlet letter.
if you're looking for me to say something, I'm still formulating what I'm going to say. In general, in theory, I agree with you. Actual cases get messy sometimes.
Mhm.
So I'm not going to issue a blanket agreement with that. In general, in theory, yes, I agree with you. But I also know that I'm a white heterosexual male. The places where I am welcome are far and wide. I can get served anywhere, just about. That's not true of everybody. I have never been in the situation where I have been needed to be served and could not be served due to something about myself. That just simply does not happen to me. So I to use that word that everyone seems to lose their mind about, I have that privilege of never having really been in that sort of situation. I'm the default. We're the default. We are the easy setting on the simulation that is being run. We're white heterosexual.
Only in Western societies.
Oh yes, and I have never been outside of America. I mean,
So-
I've never been into a non-Western society. I have that privilege too, I suppose. What I'm saying is, while I, in general, in theory, do agree with you, I certainly haven't had the experience or perspective to render a firm opinion on that subject.
So I can appreciate that. I can. You're saying, you know, you agree theoretically down to the situation. And of course, every situation's different. But I'm saying, you know, as a blanket, do you want to support people who don't like you? You know, do you want to give your money to people who hate you for nothing more than the color of your skin? That's really kind of what my argument comes down to, is if we got rid of these, you know, if we had freedom of association, then you would know, oh, I don't want to give them my money. I don't support that company. And, you know, I've spent quite a bit of time in the South. I was in the Army, so I had a lot of friends who were from everywhere, of all skin colors, ethnicities, and whatnot. And I'll say that I've never seen it where somebody has been denied because of the color of their skin. I have seen them have really horrific customer service experiences because of the color of their skin, because they have to be served. They can't be denied treatment or service rather, so you go to a restaurant and you go to order some gator tail and they're like calling you all kinds of names and it's just looking at you funny. And it's like, you get to a point where you just wish they had told you not to come in, do you know? So it's not one of those clean cut situations. I don't think there's the right answer to it other than let people make their own decisions on who they do and don't want to do business with.
Well, the thing is, to take this, the problem is this position doesn't exist isolated to today.
Right.
This taking this position now echoes back throughout history.
But that was government.
Okay, well, I do think that's a distinction that sometimes gets lost.
Right.
That the sit-ins were against government policy.
Mm-hmm. Like, yeah,
racism
Jim
was the
Crow
law of the land.
Was law. Like it wasn't that the bus company in Montgomery wanted to force people to sit in the back. It's that they would go to jail if they didn't.
Right.
I think that those bus boycotts would have never happened if it wasn't a law. Rosa Parks would have just been able to sit there because she's an older lady and that's what you do. You respect older ladies. So I think that a lot of that was law. In slavery was enshrined in the Constitution. So I think that you're right. We can't look at it just in a vacuum, but we need to understand that that was the law, punishable by men with guns coming to take you and everything you've ever worked for away. Right. And if we don't have that, then I would say it stands to reason, especially today, that people overall would be much less. They wouldn't be like that.
And to tie it back into the mask conversation,
yeah,
how many bus drivers do you think were racist? I'm sure some of them were, but were able to be like, get to the back of the fucking bus, and say, oh, it's the fucking law, and treat people like shit because it was the law. And how many other people were afraid to break the rules and were like, you have to go to the back of the bus. Right. You have to go to the back of the bus. I can't be breaking the rule. You have to go to the back. And neither of those things is good for somebody who's actually a scumbag to hide behind the law, or for somebody who otherwise wouldn't do it to be forced to because it's the law. It's like,
yeah.
So the whole...
and the vast majority of people, the vast majority of bus drivers who I suspect didn't care one way or the other.
Probably,
but
yeah.
They had a job. They had the rules for the job. And so they put aside their own personal conscience. They put aside the work of actually thinking about this decision and said, hey, this is my job. I'll do this. These kind of laws, like the mask mandate and like the bus law, they take away the conscience of the worker. Yes.
Oh, that's a great point. That's a really good point. In the same way that I believe this is kind of a left turn, and taxation in the name of doing good for the downtrodden and like the least privileged people of our society, and then spending it on bombs. It removes my incentive. If I see a homeless guy, I've paid whatever taxes for there to be homeless shelters, whatever. It removes my incentive for direct human kindness. When I've paid, not only do I have less money, but also like I'm supposed to be paying for this guy to have a service and it's not helping him. Mm-hmm. And it's like, now I have less money. And I'm like, why don't you just go to the shelter that I pay for with my taxes? It's like it's like a cover for me not having to do anything. When I think really we should be good to each other. I don't think it's really a good excuse if you can't do it. Go ahead.
So it's funny you bring up homelessness, because I just, like a couple weeks ago, not even a month yet, finished my booklet on how to solve homelessness, the causes and solutions of it. And a lot of it comes down to the government. Yes, there are people who are mentally and physically unable to work, that are physically and mentally unable to take care of themselves. But a lot of it comes down to zoning regulations, property taxes, minimum wage, licensing requirements. And it's all these things where if we just got rid of them, you would see so many more people able to work and then able to support themselves and be at least semi-self-sufficient to the point where they could rely on a little bit of charity rather than needing to be completely taken care of. or they would need to have a couple of roommates rather than live by themselves, but they're not on the street. So when we look at minimum wage, like here in Maine, it's 12.15 an hour now, and that's $4.90 higher than the federal minimum wage, which is 7.25. So even if you just think of it in this way, like if we got rid of our minimum wage and went down to the federal minimum wage, that opens up almost $5 of earning power that people who were previously kicked out of the labor market because they don't produce enough can now get in. Yes, it sucks that you only make, say, $5 or $7 an hour, but if the government wasn't taking 20% of it and then taking it every single time you go buy anything, you might be able to be okay for a little while. And then, more importantly, you're learning the skills to move your way up. So that way you can make 15, 20, 25 an hour.
And from a libertarian socialist perspective, yes, you probably are not being paid what you're worth. You're probably not being paid what you're contributing to society, but merely raising the wage isn't going to fix that. I mean, yeah, you get paid a bit more. You're still a cog. You're still an employee with a boss and all that. There are better, more sustainable solutions to that problem, that very real problem, than merely raising the minimum wage. I mean, that's a Band-Aid. I mean, it's a liberal Band-Aid that people put on in order not to go for the more sustainable solutions.
Well, nobody asks, why do we have to raise the minimum wage? Why was it adequate for somebody to get paid $7.25 in 1940, and it's completely inadequate today as far as maintaining, having a house or whatever it is? Like, why is that standard of pay no longer paying for people's bills? Like, that used to cover your shit. Nobody's looking at the root of the problem. Like, why is the cost of living going up so much higher? If your wages weren't chasing the vastly inflating cost of living due to the inflation of the dollar, you wouldn't have to worry about that. But
that's true too.
Wages lag in terms of that. So as they print dollars, there's more dollars chasing the same number of goods. The businesses have to adjust their prices before they can possibly pay people more, because they're not bringing in more money. It's just more dollars chasing after the same number of goods. So it's a mess. It's a mess. and it starts with the cost of living going up and the value of the dollar going down.
Mm-hmm.
So
that
Johnny,
is a very important part.
In the LibSoc framework, is there a minimum wage?
It's not really part of policy, no. I mean, a minimum wage would require a government, and LibSocs are basically anarchists. I mean, we're in the general broader anarchist camp, I would say. So no, there is no minimum wage policy when it comes to minimum wage.
This is why I'm so damn excited to bring you on and actually have you explain this to me, because I've asked that question to another LibSoc, and he goes, well, yeah, I mean, everybody should make a living wage.
Well, okay, there's a thing. Everyone should make a living wage. That doesn't mean that there should be a federally mandated minimum wage. Those are two separate statements that too many people, including LibSocs, confuse. But yeah, those are two separate things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he didn't really answer my question, as like you just said. He just gave me this emotional thing. So you actually have a real no, there's no room for that. So I want to hear what you have to say, because I think after I hear you explain it, I'll have many less hangups with libertarian socialism than I currently do, because I'm coming from a point of ignorance. But go ahead, Bill.
I believe they're fully compatible. I believe there's absolutely room for voluntary forms of socialism. Mm-hmm. I just don't believe in forcible socialism. It's like, I think in voluntary, it would eliminate so much waste, because people could opt out at any point. Like, hey, I don't feel like this is helping me anymore. I don't think these people are, wherever you're contributing, there has to be some sort of fund. If we're going to do this, if we're going to socialize things, people have to pool their money together in some way, right? But if you're a libertarian, it's got to be voluntary. I believe that's possible. People just have to be organized enough to freaking do it, and I think, and also not be forced to be doing something else by the state,
right?
So I think it's compatible. It's not where my mind goes, but I do think it's compatible, and I would be happy. I think it's great that they're socialists, that are libertarians, that are like, we should do this without the overbearing power of the federal state. Like, that's the best, because it shows that libertarians aren't like trying to force you to live one way. Like, no, go have your society where everybody's pitching in exactly that way. And if this dude who wants to live in the woods and sell you beaver skins and keep all his money and not contribute to your society, and you guys collectively buy beaver skins, it's one fun. That's great. He can go live his life. And that seems like you can have both of those things. Like, and you just
long have we
wanna
told
live in
tales of the mysterious beaver man.
Yeah. And you just want to live in the group where people are all pitching in together. And like, that makes sense to me.
And
I'm sure you have a framework better than I do. Like,
and I've long said that, I don't think we need to have, just because I'm what gets categorized as an anarcho-capitalist. Really, I drop the capitalist part and I'm just an anarchist. Whatever system you live in, as long as there are no rulers, I don't see that as a bad system. Even if it's not the most economically prosperous, I view it as a good system because it's a moral and just one. So I've always tried to, like, I'm actually trying to figure out right now, how can anarcho-communism, socialism, capitalism, and Georgism all occur within the same territorial area? So you can have all of these different cultures in societies interacting, conducting business transactions on a daily basis. And that way there's no coercion for anybody.
That'd be a trick.
It would
we
be
might
a
have to
hell
have
of a
separate
trick.
towns. We might have to have separate towns.
Well,
But like, we could trade as separate towns
Right.
in that, you know what I'm saying? We could trade as separate towns in that framework of anarchy. Like a whole collective of libertarian socialists could trade with one beaver trapper. Like, that's a thing.
Well, and just to kind of put it in, like, anarcho-communism, for instance, there's nothing stopping you and 1,000 friends from pooling all of your resources together, building a commune, and spending money out of a joint account. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. There's nothing stopping you and your friends from pooling your money together and saying, all right, we all get a certain percentage of this. That's your yearly cut. And then why couldn't you take that and step back into normal, quote unquote, normal society, and start using your debit card or whatever it may be to buy from Hannaford's or Kroger's or whatever, your grocery store is. I mean,
Also, it should be mentioned, we're all part of the Free Speech Media Network, which is a co-op.
right. We're a capitalist commune.
Yeah.
So that's something to consider.
Yeah, we are a for-profit commune, basically. Everybody has a say in the network, and we get to really determine how the hell this thing goes, but we're all in it to make money at the same time. Not just to make money, but that's one of the side effects, is that hopefully we make a little bit of money to make it worth the hours that we put into this thing.
And to do it without a Murdoch or a Roger Ailes
Right.
in the background.
Roger Sanchez in the background.
That's right. Which he has a concert in Miami this weekend, if anyone's interested.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah. It'll be a good one. Techno everywhere. I'm excited.
Yeah, he takes off his disguise.
So I have an interview with Adam Kokesh in about an hour, so I need to get going. But you guys can hang out if you want still. Just stay on the Zoom anyway if you want. But I'm gonna head out. So you guys can find all my stuff. Just go to harrisonkemp.com. It's where everything is. My books, my blogs, my friggin' podcasts, and everything. So catch me there. Other than that, Johnny, it was great to finally meet you.
You can find all my stuff at johnnylemuria.com, by the way.
Johnny Lemuria.
Lemuria.com.
That's Johnny with 2 N's, by the way.
Yes.
And an H.
And an H.
And an H. And an L and an E and an M and a U and an R and an I and an A.
Hey!
And if you want to find my stuff, you can just follow me on Facebook at Bill is a Joke. That's all one word. Or on Twitter, same thing. Bit of a troll.
A bit. But we love you for it, buddy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everybody for listening. Thank you for joining us, guys. And we'll have to do this again sometime. This was awesome. We got to talk about some stuff I never get to talk about. And we got to go in depth in a way that we never really get to go in depth, on AI and tech and, talking about that. And then just on coronavirus. Usually it's a 2-minute conversation and then we move on. It was good to really talk about some of the history and how it relates to all these different things that we never really put together, the different cultural things that we never think about. So thank you guys for coming on. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, man.
Thank you very much.
And there we go.